Hello, welcome to this short recorded lecture that will give you some advice or some recommendations to help you plan your positive impact project. Now, first of all, we want to have a little look at researching your issue. So, as part of your positive impact project, you need to identify a real issue. It could be global, national, regional, it could be something well understood, it could be something quite unique. But you need to identify that issue and then you need to do some research to kind of show that it's a real thing, that it's actually impacting people, the planet, the environment, society. So we want to find out, are there any social trends? Are there any particular technology trends related to this issue? We want to kind of like work out the context for the issue, if you like. So we want to look at something called macro environmental factors. So the macro marketing environment is a layer of the marketing environment where there are factors that affect us as businesses or as charities, but these factors are big, they're kind of broad, and we don't have a lot of control over them. So when we're looking at doing any marketing, we always want to try and understand the marketing environment. We want to know what's happening in the world, what's happening in our country or in our region that might affect the success of the project. What do we need to know about? What do we need to be aware of? Are there any opportunities? Are there any threats? The more informed we are, the more research we've done, the more likely we will succeed because we are basing our strategy on research. We're not going into it blind, we're not going into it with guesswork. So we need to do some research, we need to understand the marketing environment in which we are operating. So we have a tool that we use in marketing. Now, if any of you guys have done a business A level or business degree, undergraduate, or marketing, you will probably be familiar with this model. Sometimes it's called PEST, sometimes it's PESTLE, sometimes it's STEEPLE. It depends on how many different elements, how many different areas you're being encouraged to identify and kind of explore. So it's a framework that helps to plan our research. So we have an idea for an issue for a positive impact project, and we want to understand the marketing environment, any threats, any opportunities, what's going on, and we need to do some research. Where do we start? The best place to start is by sort of breaking down your research and looking in different directions. So looking, is there anything political that might affect the success of my project? Is there anything with the economy that might provide a reason for my project to be successful or a reason for it to fail? Is there any sort of social issues? So we kind of use this as a kind of a compass, if you like. So we can use the PESTLE framework as a research tool to make sure we're looking in all the right directions when we're doing our research. So we can make sure we are investigating each area of the marketing environment to see if there's anything that could actually be useful to know, anything that could actually help us with coming up with a strategy, or anything we need to be aware of and avoid. So if you're going to look for, say, for example, political factors that might impact the success of your project, you might want to look for government reports. You might want to look at news reports on policy, law, and regulations that affect your project's issue. So let's say you were looking at homelessness, and you wanted to provide a solution to help people who are homeless, whether it's providing for basic needs, whether it's helping them with accommodation. It would be really useful to kind of understand what the government's policy regards homelessness is. Are there any funds? Is there any new regulation or policies coming in? What are the sort of government level statistics for homelessness? So using the PESTLE framework, it helps us to kind of look in each direction. So we could look at social issues or technology issues. So we might find that a lot of people who are homeless still do actually have smartphones. Smartphones secondhand are very cheap to pick up. Sometimes people become homeless and they still manage to maintain their current sort of smartphone. It might be on a kind of a top-up basis, but that smartphone ownership might mean that they could perhaps use an app that could connect them to some relief support charities or what have you. So we can do some research, we can look at technology, we can look at social trends, we can look at government reports, and that will help us to understand the issue with a much broader context. So we look at each area, and we explore, we find out, is there anything happening with the economy, with inflation, with employment, that might affect either our issue or the solution that we're providing? Are there any social trends regards how people behave? Will this affect the success of our project? Will this potentially help justify the solution and make us more sure about our success. So we use this PESTLE framework to just look at different areas, and it's kind of a research tool. It guides us. So it's just one way that you could perhaps look at researching your issue and providing strong justification. So the benefit of a PESTLE is that it provides us with an awareness, or a greater awareness of the context of the issue, and perhaps some opportunities that might be presented in terms of coming up with a solution. So our solution might be better. It might be better based on research. It might be better justified and have a stronger opportunity for success because there is data to support that there are factors that are opportunities. It also might help to equip us to be aware of and avoid potential threats because of our research and our understanding of government policy regards the pandemic. We might not plan an event in the next 6 months because the risk it might be cancelled or postponed due to social distancing regulation. So by doing our research and understanding the environment that we're operating in, it can help us to avoid any or reduce the risk of failure or the risk of problems of our project. So use this framework if you like to help you to undertake some research and become aware of all of the different factors that might affect the issue and your solution. So some tips for presenting. If you do choose to use PESTLE to plan your research, PESTLE framework, a couple of tips based on previous student work. First of all, quite often students will do very deep PESTLE analysis and they might find several factors in each area. One thing to avoid is when you're doing your presentation, do not read out a long list. Don't read out every single factor. It's boring. It takes up too much valuable time from the total presentation. Summarize the most important factors, the ones that really impact your project, that have really affected your decision. So go broad with your research and then pick the most important factors and discuss those. Okay, so you don't have to go through and talk about political and then legal and then economic and then technology, etc., etc. Just pick the ones that really matter. Secondly, some really bad PESTLE analysis we see are when students guess, estimate, just talk about what they think might be a thing. PESTLE is purely for research. Only put research findings in your PESTLE analysis. Don't put what you conjecture, don't put what you think, don't think, oh, generally I know this is kind of an issue. Show me the research. If it hasn't got a citation, if it's not from a reliable source, it should not be in your PESTLE. The PESTLE is a framework to help us plan research, so you should only have things, understandings, knowledge, data that have come from researching and reading reliable, credible sources in your PESTLE. Okay? The other thing is you don't have to try and find one factor for each P, E, S, and T, etc. It's okay if you have had a look and there's nothing particularly political that affects your issue. Move on and say, okay, is there anything environmental? Do we have a shortage of raw materials? Nope, that doesn't affect us. Is there anything to do with climate change? Nope, that doesn't really affect our project. Okay, there's nothing environmental that affects us, so leave that one blank. It's not a kind of a box ticking exercise. It's just a guidance to say, okay, have I looked in every direction? Have I looked in at all of these factors? So don't think you have to have a point for each of the letters of the PESTLE. You do not. As long as you've looked, that's the main thing. Just bring out the most important findings, having used this framework to guide you. So the marketing environment, so as a charity, as a non-for-profit, as a positive impact project, you do not exist in a vacuum. There are other things going on that we need to be aware of. So I've just brought your attention to something called the macro environment. The macro environment is the political, environmental, technology, economic, social, cultural, legal things. These big, broad factors that we can't control, but they are happening and they can affect us. The next layer in the marketing environment is something called the micro environment. It's also known as the performance environment because the way our competitors perform affects us. So let's say our competitors drop a bomb campaign and their campaign is fantastic, it's very successful, their marketing campaign leads to them having a greater market share. That one would possibly reduce our market share. So what our competitors do affects us, what we do affects our competitors. So the performance environment is kind of more to do with kind of a given sort of play and give between different actors in the environment. And then finally, on the inside, we have the internal environment. So this is the organization. In your case, it will be your team. So you have a positive impact project. There, you are a group of students, and between you, you have a set of skills. You have some experience, you have some knowledge, you might have some IT literacy, you might have some creative skills or skills using creative programs, you might have experience in business or social media marketing. So in terms of analysing the internal environment for your project, you're looking at what do we have, what would help us to be successful. So, and we do this when we're looking at organisations or charities. We'll say, okay, what assets do we have? What are our strengths? So we kind of try and have an understanding of the total marketing environment. So the PESTLE is a really good framework for looking at that macro environment and understanding what factors there are. In terms of the performance environment, where we have our competitors, our buyers, our suppliers, perhaps intermediaries, we have another tool that we can use. And this tool or sort of marketing framework is called Porter's 5 Forces. So a chap called Michael Porter back in 1979 came up with this model, and it's been very widely used. It's quite useful, and it helps us to kind of understand what some of the considerations are in that next layer, that micro environment. It helps us to understand, we are an existing company or a new company, what we need to take into consideration to kind of reduce risk and to kind of ascertain who has the power and what we need to kind of like keep an eye on and be aware of. Now, for your positive impact projects, because you're not a well-established company, I think the main areas you need to focus on when using this model is competitors. If you're bringing out an app or a website or even a group, and already there are many groups or there are many apps or websites that provide the same value, will you be able to compete? Will you be able to attract the audience's attention past the well-established charities or non-for-profits that already exist? What difference, what sort of extra value are you providing? So you'll need to do some competitive research to find out how competitive the marketplace currently is, what the differences are, so you can actually see, would someone who had been using a competitor's service come and use yours instead? So it's really kind of quite important to do to work out, is your project going to be successful? Is it a highly competitive landscape? Is there a lot of competitive rivalry? Or are we offering something quite unique and something that is really not provided for, that our audience is looking for? You also want to look at the audience. If you're looking to get donations, for example, there might be many other charities that are vying for attention and want to attract donors and have a very good case, and they've got lots of experience and case studies and testimonials and what have you. How do you compare? Do the customers have a lot of buying power? Can they pick and choose who they donate to or who they volunteer with? So you kind of want to work out who has the power in the relationship between you and the buyer. And then likewise, with technology and things that change, is there a good chance that what you offer might be substituted? One example I always give when looking at threat of substitution is looking at the UK. We had a store called Blockbuster in the UK that used to they used to rent videos and DVDs. They were very, very successful. They had an almost monopoly. Every high street had a Blockbuster video rental. And they were so confident in their offering that they did not see streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime coming for them. And it was a very quick death. They were there one day and pretty much gone the next because they failed to adapt. So they didn't see that technology had changed and there was a threat of substitution. So this model is quite useful just to kind of weigh up who has the power. And again, it's a model to help us structure our research. Should we do competitor research? Should we be concerned with how many options the buyer has, what their power is, and should we be looking at threat of substitutions? So these are just a couple of models that you can use to help you to structure your research and give you an idea of which directions you might want to look in to kind of broaden your understanding of the issue and to strengthen and justify your proposed solution. So I've put a couple of sources together here. If you'd like to understand the PESTLE analysis better, you can look at Brasington and Petit, Essentials of Marketing. Now this is an ebook on the library, so if you click on that link, I'll go to chapter 2, page 43. They use something called a steeple analysis because they've also added in ethics. So it's political, economical, social, technology, legal, environmental, and ethics. They've rearranged the letters, but it's pretty much the same approach. It's looking at different factors. And then you've got Michael Porter's Five Forces. You can have a look at, there's a journal article and also the original book, which you can access on the library, where he talks about how to use the model. So this is just some fundamental core marketing theory that can help us to structure our research. You don't have to stick to it rigorously, but it can give you just a framework, an idea of where to start, which directions to look in, because you need to research your issue and research your solution to make sure you're doing something that is needed, something that is unique, something that has value, something that would stand up and perhaps compete against what's already available. So hopefully this has been useful, and it's given you some understanding of some marketing models that we can use to help us structure our research to better unpack and justify our issue and the solution that we're offering through our positive impact project.